Yes, now I'm Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the clans and bloodlines of Vampire the Masquerade in the World of Darkness. Where we last left off, we were talking about Cappadocian bloodlines. Well, today I have the final two Cappadocian bloodlines I want to talk about, the Mla Watu and the Samedi. Let's start with the Mla Watu, which is one of the legacies of Laibon. Now, they have the disciplines of Auspex, Fortitude, and Necromancy. They are a minor legacy. There is no legacy more shunned among the Laibon than the Mla Watu. The fact is, the Laibon as a whole is known for its lack of humanity. They are far less than that. The Laibon as a whole, every legacy, tends to respect African death customs and the dead. Well, the Mla Watu go beyond this. They go beyond just perhaps speaking with the ancestors, with the dead. They are known to control them body and soul. This is a kind of horrific thing to most of the legacies, and it makes them be very shunned and disliked for this very act that they do. They're even feared. Those that would investigate them or even hunt them oftentimes disappear, so there's very little information, and they tend to be solitary. So just the fact that because of all this, they're given a wide berth. People fear that should they pass away, either hunting them or investigating them, well, they'll find themselves spirit and body in employment afterwards. Final death won't come to them. Now, the few that have spoken to a Mla Watu have found them very old, scholarly. They find that they have interests in information about the old Laibon, information about the old days, far beyond history. But the oldest elders, they seem to give away some kind of information, give away their history because they appear non-African. So it seems that they truly are a legacy that has been within the Laibon very long, but perhaps not from the beginning. Now, beyond their penchant and love of death, they do have an incredible thirst for knowledge, in particular occult lore, even to almost an excessive degree. It is said that they have information about the origins and the history of the Laibon that no other legacy has, though they are unwilling to share this information that they have discovered about the true history of the Laibon. Now, as solitary as they are, they do have a mutual understanding, a pact, an unwritten one between them, that should some kind of event arise that requires them to all work together, they will be ready to unite. They realize they are the most despised of all the legacies within the Laibon, so they are ready to mobilize together against any kind of major threat to the legacy as a whole. They are ready to protect the legacy and to keep it going. They also seem to have these plans that all seem to be connected together, sharing the same goals, but they don't really congregate. They do occasionally meet together and do have some regular meetings. These regular meetings tend to be to discuss findings and trade information with each other. Now, when they have layers, it's filled with books, manuscripts, artifacts, talismans, all things of arcane knowledge-related, arcane nature. They also have a penchant for exotic skulls and skeletons, which has seemed to come about lately, that they love to collect and gather them. Now, they share the pallid complexion that the Cappadocians do, that kind of look of a corpse, look of death about them. This makes it very difficult for them to get within human society, and even amongst undead, if they are in a group of them. They tend to be easy to spot. Now let's move on and talk about the other bloodline I want to discuss today, the Samedi, who are a relatively new bloodline, but seem to have their origins deep within the Caribbean. Their original disciplines were necromancy, obfuscate, and thanatosis, but in more modern incarnations they've replaced necromancy with fortitude. Members of this group look like a corpse, or a zombie. That's what their appearance looks like, and unlike the Nosferatu, their bodies are actually in a constant state of decay. Social interactions fail miserably. They just automatically fail. And rotting chunks are just known to fall off of them. And the older they get, the more rapidly this occurs. The smell of death seems to also hang on them constantly, meaning they don't blend in with human society whatsoever. Now, they seem to be originating from the Caribbean and have close ties to the voodoo religion and their various legacies. They practice a unique discipline that has a control over death, but unlike the necromancy of the Giovanni, this seems to have a more temporal mention to it. This does mean that the Giovanni and the Samedi do seem to have this kind of tension between them, and they do tend to have a little bit of enmity. Now, the exact origins of the Samedi are debated by many different kindred, and there are many different theories that they postulate. The one that people have suggested, which is seen as the least possibly to be true, is that they are an offshoot and a legacy of the Cappadocians, which is true. That their founder was in fact a Cappadocian, with a unique version of his own curse that he brought into the Bloodline, altering it, changing it from the Cappadocians into the Samedi. Now, in the final knights, they've spread across the globe. They're everywhere in these modern knights. Now, granted, their numbers are still small, but they will embrace usually from those that are working closely related with death and are accepting of their own mortality. Oftentimes, those that work at mortuaries or morgues actually are very good examples of those that they will embrace into the Samedi way of life. Now, oftentimes, they will get themselves involved with both occult and criminal activities set within a city. They will find themselves basically purveyors of occult black market materials, or even to get into some criminal aspects. In immigrant communities, they're even known to prey upon them for their own rituals. The fact is that they also do work as mercenaries and assassins. Because of this, oftentimes princes of a city will turn a blind eye to the Samedi, who may be threatening to break the Masquerade with their relationship with the kin, with the mortals of an area, just because there might be a point in time where they might have to call upon a certain individual that they don't really know much about, that can take care of a job for them. Basically, they have the special abilities that sometimes might be needed, and their other transgressions tend to be overlooked because of it. Now, they do hold the Giovanni and the Nosferatu with a level of esteem. So, a Samedi tends to avoid calling out any kind of jobs related to them, especially hits on them for assassinations, basically mercenary work that could oppose them, unless the pay is good enough. If you do give them enough, they'll go beyond their basic respect and be willing to do the job. Now, as I said, they embrace those that are connected with death, mortuaries being a great place to do it. Many tend to favor mental attributes and knowledge-based skills when it comes to embracing individuals. Though, those of the mercenary/assassin purview will actually embrace those with more physical abilities and more talents and skills rather than knowledges for their abilities. Samedi rarely will have the herd, mentor, or resource background. They don't tend to have these. And it is important to note that Samedi, a good portion of them have been known to practice necromancy. In fact, many elders can practice it themselves. Even though there does seem to be some enmity between them and the Giovanni, they can still use this ability. So it's hard to say why and how they can learn it. So the Samedi rarely congregate as a clan. They tend to be incredibly solitary, and oftentimes, if it's a meeting, it's an informal meeting between a couple of them, 2 or 3, that have slight discussions and then part ways back upon their own paths. Tend to be solitary in nature even, and they rarely seek out companionship. There are rumors of cabals of them that meet in graveyards and other special places, but these are unsubstantiated. If you get lucky and actually converse with one, you can find that they have a level of intelligence and to them that you would not expect. Now, they do have great amounts of knowledge, but oftentimes their knowledge of death and the way it works does show off their basically young age when it comes to something more like a Giovanni or other bloodlines related to the Cappadocians. They also have a loose association with witch doctors and death cults. They do seem to be singular. Oftentimes they will have their own goals in mind that show off that they're not very group related, and definitely they do not share them with even each other. The fact is, each of them has their own individual goals, more than likely in mind, that they will practice regardless of the clan itself. Now, there are a few Samedi that have both joined the Camarilla and the Sabbat. But even if you should press these members for information, they really can't give anything else about the other members of the Samedi. They tend to not know much anyway. Now, they are, of course, lorded over by their founder, this character called the Baron, Baron Samedi, who has let folks know there's some great role within kindred history that the Samedi will have. But how the Baron came about this information and what that information is, he refuses to give out. But he will let the Samedi know, and the world know, that they are important. Now, when the Samedi were originally proposed, they had the disciplines of necromancy and obfuscate and thanatosis. When it came to the revised edition, that is when they replaced the necromancy with fortitude. Now, when we come into the V20 age, we've separated out even more. We look to the Victorian age vampire material to show us that that was the version of the Samedi that had necromancy, obfuscate, and thanatosis, and the more modern V20 edition shows them having fortitude in place of necromancy. It is also important to note that within the LARP rules of Vampire the Masquerade, Samedi can learn necromancy without another vampire teaching them. So this is something that hints on that they have the ability to learn necromancy even if they don't have it, especially in these modern nights where the older Samedi had necromancy instead of fortitude. It means it's not a clan discipline, but one that they don't need another vampire to teach them. Whether you not use this in your games or not is completely up to you, because it technically is in the LARP rules. But that's it for today. I interest you to the final two bloodlines of the Cappadocians I want to talk about. The Mla Watu, which are very similar to the Cappadocians, but one of the legacies of Laibon. They use some of the same abilities. They are masters of necromancy. They appear similar to them. They are masters of knowledge, but they are deep ingrained within the Laibon itself that has kept them alive, regardless of the threats, even into the modern nights. That they are still here within the Laibon itself. A minor legacy, which is hated, feared, and kept away from. That basically people dislike them. Vampires dislike them. They're relatively terrible for what they do to the dead, but it keeps them to themselves, and it keeps them safe. Then I talked about the Samedi, walking corpses, walking zombies that are constantly rotting away, masters of a power of death referred to as thanatosis, which is more about decay and aging, death when it comes to that, rather than necromancy, which is controlling death in a way. It's a completely different discipline, but unique to them, that gives them these opportunities not just to be their own scholars in their own rights, but some to be mercenaries or assassins, using their abilities to kill for the princes, and then keep whatever sort of criminal or basically nearly masquerade-breaking organizations and effects that they're having to themselves. They are very much so solitary, keeping to themselves, having plans and goals to themselves. Though their founder, their leader, the Baron, he does say there's greatness in the Samedi when it comes to kindred history, and it will be shown in the future. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows your support for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you could always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.